everybody, and welcome to class number 6 of Startup School with Startup Canada and TruShield Insurance. Startup School is a program of Startup Canada Live, a monthly webinar series dedicated to the professional development of Canada's entrepreneurs and community leaders. My name is Catherine Forrest, and I am the Communications, Marketing, and GR Manager for Startup Canada. I will be your host today, and I will be introducing our featured guests in just a few moments. Today's Startup School is about protecting your startup. Today's Startup School is powered by TruShield Insurance, the official insurance provider for Canada's startup community. Starting a business can be challenging, as we all know, at the best of times, and every entrepreneur knows that success is 90% preparation. Planning and preparation includes protecting your business. So how do you plan and protect your business for the worst case scenarios to improve your odds for success? From backing up on the cloud, accessing and mitigating risk, and finding the right insurance for your business, today we will be learning top tips on how you can set up yourself for success, and protect your startup from day one. Our featured guest today is Scott Vandenberg. He's joining us from TruShield Insurance, and Scott will provide us with a 10-minute 101 on protecting and insuring your startup, and then we'll open it up to our panel for the next 30 minutes, and our panel features some of Canada's leading entrepreneurs, including Rivers Corbett. He's the founder and CEO of Coaching by Rockstars. He's from Fredericton, New Brunswick. We also have Jonathan Moody, founder and COO of Versature. He's from Ottawa, Ontario. Laura Aslan of Scriptofan Technologies Incorporated from Vancouver, British Columbia. And lastly, Xavier Henri Hervé, Executive Director and co-founder at District 3 Innovation Centre. So welcome and thank you to each of our experts and to all of the panelists. Following our panel, we will have an opportunity for our watchers, our listeners, to ask any questions to our panel via Twitter using the hashtag StartupSchool. You can also leave a comment on our YouTube channel, and we'll do our very best to get them towards the end of the program. So let's get started. Scott, I'll pass it over to you.
Hi, I'm Scott Vandenberg, and welcome today. I'm the Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah. Okay, so I'm responsible for delivering a quality product to our small business customers at TruShield Insurance. So TruShield Insurance, we're Canada's first direct-to-insure insurance brand focusing on the needs of our small business customer. So we provide property, liability, and commercial automobile insurance for home-based businesses, professional services, contractors, and retail businesses, amongst others. So the first question is a lot of people ask us is why, as a startup, why do we need to get insurance? What is the reason? And what we found from some of our research is that there are a lot of insurers or a lot of startups that actually don't even purchase insurance when they first start up. And I think the number is in excess of actually 50%. Oftentimes what happens is that someone or a startup business doesn't even get insurance until they're asked to. So for example, they go to sign a lease and the landlord asks them for evidence of insurance, or it could be that you enter into a contract with one of your a large customer and they ask to see evidence of insurance as well. So, but you have a lot of exposure prior to then where insurance would be a definite benefit to you. So for example, when you're a startup, most startups invest their life savings and they actually borrow money to create their business. So without insurance, the money that you've invested can be exposed to unexpected losses, and that's where insurance is designed to step in, is to protect you in the event of an unforeseen loss and to help you keep your business up and running again. So insurance companies, and TruShield in particular, we have experience with getting businesses back up and running. It's not only insurance doesn't just cut you a check, but it helps you out along the way. And I'll give you some examples of that. So insurance policies, a liability insurance policy, or an errors and omissions insurance policy, they offer you some protection in the case that you are sued. Somebody thinks that you have done wrong towards them. Let's say you actually haven't done anything wrong, but you're going to be saddled with legal defense costs to prove that you did no wrong. And insurance steps in and they cover your defense costs as part of the insurance to prove that you are not responsible for the financial payout. Or it could be actually the fact that you are responsible, but you still have those legal defense costs, and on top of it, um, we will help to pay the third party to restore that third party for any wrongdoing that you as a startup may have done towards them. So you can imagine legal costs can skyrocket really quickly, and you want to make sure that you're protected for that. So that could be a startup. Let's say it's a home-based business. You feel I don't need insurance, but you're out there, you're signing contracts with customers, and there is the possibility that you could get sued for some loss, or you could actually cause a loss. So there's that. But you also have physical assets that you want to protect. So if you're investing in specialized equipment, it could be specialized printers, it could be some process equipment. It could be your computers as well. And if you suffer a loss from them, from water damage, for example, or a fire, you can't operate. So not only do you suffer a loss from having to replace those physical assets, but during the time that you don't have those physical assets, you also cannot earn income. So aside from just protecting you from your potential liability losses, then also property insurance to protect you from excuse me, the potential physical loss to that property. We also can protect you from what we call a business interruption loss. And what this provides is coverage for your equipment has been lost to a fire or water damage, for example, and you can't operate anymore, so you're not generating income. So it protects that income that you would have had no loss occurred. We also can provide insurance, which is a hot topic in these days, is cyber insurance. So let's say your computer, you download a virus into your computer and you can't operate. So you can get protection to cover your business interruption loss from that. So if you lose income because you can't generate income because all your data is gone, it also helps to restore that data. Let's say you're a contractor, a small startup contractor, you lose your tools, your tools are stolen, you need to recover the loss of tools right away. Insurers help to cut you that check immediately so you can go out and replace your tools so you don't lose your customers. Some of the research has shown too that a lot of startups, they can start in there as a home-based business, and some people have the mistaken impression that they already have insurance on their home, so that insurance will help protect them in the event of a loss. Well, many or most personal lines insurance policies, the ones that are designed to cover your home and your automobile, will have specific exclusions in there that say that we will not cover losses that arise from the operation of a business. So you want to make sure that when you get a commercial insurance policy, a small business insurance policy, you know that you have specific coverage for your assets and for any liability losses that you may have. So how do you choose coverage? How do you know what type of insurance that you need? Well, that depends on the type of business that you are. So if you're a contractor, you have different needs than would be a management consultant, for example, or a retail store. And let's say that retail store is a bakery, or even if you're a home-based business that is involved in providing food, catering, perhaps, you have perishable inventory. So you want to make sure that you have coverage for if there's power outages and you lose your perishable inventory. Whereas if you're a contractor, you want to make sure that you're protected from any damage that you may do when you're visiting your customer's premises. Let's say a contractor goes to someone's house to install some windows, and while they're installing their windows, the old window falls and it damages all the your customer's property inside of their house. Now, what about consultants? Consultants, often their assets are minimal in terms of physical assets, so they have some computer equipment, they're operating out of their home potentially. So they're okay to say, you know what, I can replace my computer, it's not a big deal, I'm backed up on the cloud, so I'm not worried about that. But there's also, for consultants, what we call errors and errors and omissions insurance. So errors and omissions insurance or professional liability will provide coverage for those consultants in the event that the customer that they're working for says, you know what, you consulted me to do something, I went ahead and did it, and now I have lost money. So they engage in a lawsuit to try and collect some of this lost income that the third party has had. So, like I said before, whether you're right or wrong, it may prove that you're not actually negligent, but in the meantime, you have all those defense costs that could cripple you and your business in the interim. So the insurance coverage will help you provide you with that confidence to know that you're covered. Other types of things that could influence what type of insurance that you need are the assets that you have. So if you're a contractor, you will have tools and equipment that is used off-site. You'll also have tools and equipment that you use to install in a third party's premises. So you want to make sure that you have coverage for that stuff. So how much coverage does an individual need? So I guess the easier side is the property side, and you'll know how much you paid for stuff and what you want to be protected for. So if you bought some specialized equipment, so if you're a contractor, your tools, if you're a management consultant, your office equipment and your computer equipment. If you're a retail store, all the inventory and stock that you had to invest in, you know how much that's worth, so you would insure to those values. But what about your potential business income loss? So if all that equipment is damaged and you can't operate anymore, how do you know how much you need to insure for during the time that you're down so you can get that income back up and running? Well, at TruShield, we actually have a solution for that, and it's a business interruption product or business income product where you don't actually have to declare what you think your limit is. So we will just pay your limit, the amount of loss that you actually have during the time that you're down, and you don't even have to specify which limit that you want. What about on the liability or the errors and omissions side? How do you decide on a limit of insurance? Well, usually people start with a minimum of $1 million limit of liability on their policies, but depending on the type of contracts that you're signing and who you're involved with. So if you're signing a contract with a larger customer, let's say Loblaws or Bell Canada, you most likely will be required in that contract to carry minimum limits of $2, $5, or even $10 million worth of liability. So you could look to your contracts to see what type of insurance coverage that you need. So the last point that I'll talk on is just how insurance can help get you back up and running in case you do actually have a loss. So what happens is generally speaking, you have a loss, you call in right away. Let's say that a water pipe is burst and water is gushing all over your inventory or your computer equipment, and you don't know what to do. So immediately you can call our claims hotline, and they'll tell you what to do. And most often, within a short period of time, and I'm talking hours here, there will be a person on site to help remedy that loss. Now that's to protect your physical assets. And if you need to get up and running again, they will help you give you the funds, the financial means necessary to go and replace that equipment so you can set up in another location. And again, going back to the liability and errors and omissions losses, if you do get something in from a third party's lawyer saying that they're going to sue you and they want restitution for something, you can immediately contact the insurance company, and the insurance company will provide you with legal defense and advice, and they will take over the handling of that claim right away, so you can go on with caring about your business, running your business with your other customers while having the insurance company, along with the help that you have to also provide in giving information to the insurer, will help take care of that so you can get on with running your business. We do also provide some additional coverages with our insurance policy that helps you in the event of a loss, or even prior to a loss happening. So for example, when you buy an insurance policy with TruShield, you also get automatic coverage for legal assist. Legal assist is unlimited access to telephone legal advice. So let's say before you even enter into a contract with a third party, you can call up on the phone and ask our lawyers. Actually, it's a third party that we contract out with that is a collection of lawyers. You can ask them without any additional charge. If you have, what does a specific clause in that contract mean, for example, before you sign that contract? Also, it can help you with other stuff like estate planning for your business, any other business needs that you may have. It could be with respect to you have a problem employee and you want to know the correct steps to take to go about terminating your employment contract with that employee, and you want to make sure that you do so in such a way to avoid any potential wrongful dismissal lawsuits down the way. Another coverage that we have with our policies is trauma assist. So we often know that with insurance policies, the idea is to restore you to the financial place you would have been prior to the loss happening. So restore your assets, make sure your lost income is covered, etc. But trauma assist also deals with the emotional side of the loss. So let's say you have a large fire loss and your employees are traumatized by that. They will have access to consulting with emotional consultants from a third party that we have to make sure that their emotional needs are met. So that's basically all I wanted to talk about briefly about insurance. So at this point, I'll turn it back over.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Scott. That was definitely a great introduction to our session today and learned about a lot of different resources that are valuable to somebody who is starting a business. And like you say, there's so much going on when you're running a business. It's really good to know that there are people out there that can help you move beyond some of the hiccups in your business so that you can get on with making money and pleasing your customers. So I'm going to open it up to introduce our panelists today. So I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourselves, tell us about your companies, and the vantage point that you're bringing to the panel today. So we'll start with Rivers. If you just want to unmute yourself. Are you there, Rivers? All right, we'll start with Jonathan.
Thanks. Thanks, Catherine. My name is Jonathan Moody. I'm the Chief Operating Officer. I'm one of the co-founders here at Versature. We provide a cloud-based phone system, and we have for about 10 years now. I'm a little bit different than some of the other entrepreneurs in the sense that we've been doing it for about 10 years. We're growing about 50% year over year, and we're at about 30 staff now. We just broke the 30 staff barrier from my perspective. So we have felt the pain of insurance and looking at details of managing risk from that side. As we've added employees and buildings and signed leases and some big clients that, just like was discussed, required certain pieces of insurance or proof that we had them anyway.
Perfect. Thank you, Jonathan. And Laura, do you want to go next?
All right. So I'm Laura Aslan, and I had my first startup about 3.5 years ago. The startup was called Mini Checkout, and it's been acquired by a bigger company called Data Kinetics in Ottawa, who also started a child company called Omnovas, offering omni-channel solutions for retailers. And as a startup, I definitely had to deal with risk, and as an immigrant, I didn't know much about insurance, and I wish I would have known more.
You're like most of us. All right, and Xavier.
Hi. I'm the co-founder of an innovation accelerator called District 3. We deal with startups, but maybe we can take a minute and define the startups that we deal with are very much looking to put together their business model and to get repeatable transactions going. They're becoming customer ready, I would say. So the insurance may not be from the same perspective. They have They have, I think, IP insurance. They might, they have risk to manage that need to be insured for. But they don't yet have that many assets, that many employees, so they're not at the small enterprise level. Like Versature sounds like a fully running entrepreneur, which for me is a cool success story of a startup that found its business model running already.
Yes, and the viewpoint that you're coming at is definitely important as well. Getting those young startups that are, not at the same stage as Jonathan is, but still might be facing some of the similar challenges on the insurance side. So, Rivers, are you plugged in now? Doesn't look like it. All right, I'm going to move into my first question, and I'm going to direct this one directly at Jonathan, and we'll also pass it over to Laura afterwards. So, John, what are your top tips for optimal planning for your business? Are there any tools that you would recommend to startup entrepreneurs?
I mean, for us, as we grew, and it was less important when we were really small, and we quickly learned it was important, was really around communication, right? So not only obviously email and talking to each other on the phone, those types of things, but actually building it into our business processes. So as we grew and had new teams, how do they interact with other teams? Were they able to push detail to each other? Were they able to have a process flow when a new client signed up? How did it go from team to team? How did the communication and the messaging stay consistent? How did we make sure that we weren't introducing risk by signing up clients that maybe weren't a good match for our product? Or maybe we were pricing it in a range that we didn't want to because we weren't all aligned. And so for me, we've gone to Salesforce ourselves as a core product that connects all of our different pieces together, from marketing and sales to our onboarding and our new client rollouts, all the way through our customer success and our customer service side of things. So for me, it's about communication, about having those pieces that are connected to each other, so you can measure and understand what's happening around you and allow you to grow.
That's perfect. Communication. Top tips for optimal planning for any tools that you recommend.
I'm sorry, I think it got a bit stuck on my side.
Broke up for me as well, Catherine.
Yeah. Maybe she can repeat a bit.
I wanted to ask the same question to you as well. What are your recommend?
It got a bit interrupted there, but I'm just going with the assumption that you asked me as well if there were any tools or any tips about mitigating risks. I didn't know at the time of starting the startup, but recently I've been working with a location-based software provided by Esri. It's called ArcGIS. Do you still hear me? I'm not sure because it's a bit choppy on my side.
Yes, I can hear you. We're good.
Okay, so this software, it seems like it has lots of built-in risk mitigations regarding the location and geography and risk related to that. And I wish I would have known more about this software prior to starting Mini Checkout. And yeah, just using tools that are available and finding out about them, I think that's very important for any startup.
Definitely. And can you say the name of that tool again? We'll just make sure that Rochelle tweets it out to our audience.
It's called Esri, E-S-R-I. It's provided by Esri organization, and it's called ArcGIS. And it's a location-based geolocation, very comprehensive, lots of data that you can run lots of models and visualization. It's just amazing.
Okay, perfect. We'll make sure that everyone is aware of that one. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Next up, we are talking about risk today. Obviously, risk is everywhere when you're starting up. So how do you identify, assess, and mitigate risk in your companies? So I'm going to pass that one over to Xavier. You can bring it from the early startup stage perspective.
Thank you. I think I see risks from like I've coached 150 startups here in the last couple of years, and the risk is always dual. It's either a business risk, that the type that I think John was talking about earlier. So they need to manage their cash flow risk, their deal risk, their business risk, their production risks. But when it comes to risk that they need a third party from, so on that first one, they can use mentors and expertise and so on. But in terms of overall risk, I've seen the risks happen at what I would say a common denominator is a legal risk. So they need to be very careful about HR. They underestimate risk there. They need to have co-founder agreements. They need to have agreements with some of their key skills, key employees. They need agreements with IP. They'll need agreements with some of the contracts that they'll take on with agents or with customers. So a lot of it has to do with contractual risk. And deals are always good when everything's going fine. You need those tools when things are no longer going fine. And I found that having an affordable access to good legal advice and to context advice, not just adamant positions, but really a context analysis, is often a big challenge for these guys. In general, for our startups in general.
So if you had one top tip to give startup entrepreneurs that you're working with for risk mitigation, what would that one piece of wisdom be? If you had to narrow it down.
Are you still asking me? I'm sorry,
yes.
I lost you.
Sorry. Yes, Xavier. So that one top piece of the ultimate piece of wisdom for entrepreneurs dealing with risk mitigation, what would that one?
There isn't that magical recipe. I think that the only thing that an entrepreneur can do every morning is wonder about what's going to go wrong next.
Yeah. All right, fair enough. I think I see Rivers. He's unmuted, so I'm going to give him one more chance to chime in here. Are you there, Rivers?
I am here. Hopefully, you can hear me.
We can, loud and clear.
Yeah, sorry about that weird stuff. Anyway, go onwards. Look, how can I help you? What's your question?
All right, well, first of all, let's introduce yourself to our audience here, and then
Okay, great. Yeah, hi, everybody. I'm Rivers. I've been kind of an entrepreneur for about 19 years now. Love the journey. And really why I'm on the panel today is 7 years ago, I started a gourmet burger restaurant chain. We're a franchise operation, and we now have 8 locations across the country. And so amongst my many ventures, that's why I'm here today and talking about risk centered around that industry, but also, I guess, the retail industry.
Perfect. So I'm going to ask you, what are there any tools, templates, tips that you have for entrepreneurs on managing and mitigating risks?
Yeah, well, first of all, whenever I talk with startup entrepreneurs, I really focus in on mindset. We really tend to go to the toolbox first before we really understand, what are we using these tools for? What is their focus? How can they help me build my plan? How can they help me build my future? And so for me, risk really is all about ultimately minimizing it. And how you minimize it is ultimately surrounding yourself with the right team, the right people, the right advisors that can help you get you the information to ultimately build your business forward to mitigate that risk. I find it very interesting. We as a society in Canada, we take our money and we just kind of send it out to these mutual fund managers who are managing our RRSPs. We've never met these people. We have no idea their backgrounds, and yet we give them thousands of dollars each and every year. Well, that's the same thing, and it's foolish. It's absolutely foolish. Why do we do that? And so from a business perspective, I think we have the opportunity by surrounding ourselves with the right people in our industry that can answer the questions we need to have answered as our team, as advisors, and utilize them on a regular basis to help guide us with the decisions we need to make in order to protect our money, whether it's going to wherever it happens to go. So do I have a tool? Yeah, I have lots of them. But ultimately, it comes back to mindset about having the right advisors around to give you the right direction.
Yeah, perfect. And perhaps after this is all over, we can you can send us some of those tools that you do have within your own personal toolbox, and we can send them out to our audience as well. That'd be great. All right, I'm going to actually open up that same question to the rest of our panelists. So, Jonathan, you talked about communication. That ties in with what Rivers was talking about knowing the crowd that you're with and just using the right people. So, are there any tools, tips, or templates on your end that you would suggest to entrepreneurs to manage and mitigate risk?
That was to me, I assume. So, I mean, in terms of tools, I think it varies as you grow. The web-based, all the SaaS stuff out there is really where I would start. And like Rivers said, it really depends on the business and what's going to make the most sense. For me, it's about anything that allows you to connect together. Some companies are going to custom build that. If you're a SaaS product, maybe you can build it into your platform or your tools so that you can engage those customers and understand what they're doing and what possible risks lie out there from a client perspective. If you need to outsource and go to products like Asana to keep track of where things are at and when maybe a project is at risk, or there's possibility of liability of something going on because you're running behind schedule. But those are all tools I use, stuff like Asana, Trello, right? Project management type tools from my perspective. And anything that can connect together is even better. It's going to give you a better return on your investment because you're going to be able to have combined data that comes together instead of trying to use a spreadsheet to figure out what's going on between all your different tooling and departments and teams.
Yeah, that's perfect. We are Asana advocates here at Startup Canada. We use it regularly, so it is a fantastic tool. And Laura, I want to ask you the same question. You already gave us one example, but do you have any more tools or tips, templates that some of the startup entrepreneurs listening today could use in their business?
About the same, Asana, Trello. We use Salesforce a little bit, yeah. Not anything like really different other than the location one I mentioned earlier, which is a bit different. And we did miss a major tool for the legal ongoing type of support that we could have used. In our case, actually, one of the risks was the fact that one of our main shareholders actually passed away. And when we had to sell the company, that made things like very difficult. And that was a time like we should have been better prepared with some legal advice or ongoing tool that we could have used.
Yeah, that's a great example of a situation where entrepreneurs might find themselves in where they need this advice. And Scott was talking earlier about some products that they have to connect entrepreneurs to some of that legal aid. So that's really great to know that that's available. And I'll wrap this section up with asking the same question to Xavier. Any tools, tips, templates for entrepreneurs mitigating risk?
No, I think that everyone said everything. I think it's a question of connecting, having the right networks, having the right experts. It's having, I think, the right legal advice because legals will anticipate stuff. Sometimes they do too much of a big deal out of things, but you have to take it into perspective. But and I love the wording mindset. You asked me and I answered you. There's no specific one thing. You just have to get up in the morning with the right mindset. So I think everyone gave you a bit of everything. My advice is put it all together and use it all.
Perfect. I think everyone. Yes.
If I can insert one quick thing. So from my perspective, one thing I didn't touch on is I think our relationships with our insurance brokers, with our lawyers, with all the different firms that we work with, and that's really provided us insight as we've grown. And what we've done is you're not always paying them. It's actually amazing. You call a few of them up and you say, hey, this is what we're thinking about doing, and their job is to educate. And so much of the sales process now isn't about sending a quote and walking away. It's about, just like we started with here, right? All about educating. These are the possible risks you should be thinking about. And you're, I didn't even think that was a possibility. Maybe you don't need it right away. Maybe you don't need it that second. But it gives you an idea as to what you might need as things unfold a little bit, whether it's employment law, whether it's signing a lease and all of a sudden you need insurance. These are pieces that a lot of these professionals will give you information on to set you up for sales down the road, and so you can learn a lot just by sitting with them. And for us, we turned it into sales because a lot of them also ended up being clients of ours, and they turned around and said, oh, well, you guys are doing really smart things. We should be signing up with you. And so it was a great two-way path for us.
So how do you suggest building up that network and establishing those connections for that advice before you think you need it?
I think a lot of it's the ecosystem world. So you don't want to talk to companies that are used to insuring big companies, that are law firms for giant enterprises, right? They're not going to be able to talk about potential risk that's going to affect you probably. And so if you can find organizations that are pitching, whether it's insurance or lawyers that are working in the startup space, and again through incubators and different organizations like Startup Canada that are actually bringing together these people who work with startups, you're going to learn relevant information, and you're probably going to get priced a product that might make sense to you, as opposed to finding out how much it costs at the end. Well, I wasted my time. You might have learned something, but now you need to go to market and find other people. So the networks have always been good, and if you can be in networks that reflect your size, you'll probably be more successful, would be my suggestion.
Yeah, perfect. So after this session, everyone's going to go and join their startup community. They're going to download Asana, Trello. They're going to have a good mindset. They'll be set.
Right on.
All right, so moving on, we're going to open this up. I'm just going to open up the floor. You can pipe in as you wish. The question is, from IP to major liabilities, it makes sense to protect your business. At the same time, entrepreneurs don't know what they don't know. So what should entrepreneurs consider protecting? What should entrepreneurs consider protecting?
So I'm going to stick. I'm going to stick to it's rivers. I'm going to stick to why I was asked to be a panelist today and really focus in on the restaurant industry. And it's a pretty general industry, except when it comes to recipes. And that's one of the things that we really focused in on when it came to introducing our business model to prospective investors away. It's pretty open. The chairs are orange, the logo's a burger or whatever, but when it came to the recipes and how those recipes were ultimately created, we were very protective of that until the dotted line was signed. And so for us, that was our IP. Everything else pretty transparent.
If I was to build off of what Laura said, I think understanding whether it's an exit or an investment, for me, I think understanding what those people are going to be worried about and making sure that you're thinking about those same things, as you're aligned with whatever that looks like. And if that's just growth and let's say it's an IPO, you better sure understand what those risks they're going to have at that point. Not that you need to make those initially, but you need to have your eye on them, because if you have 1 million shareholders already out there because everyone bought in small amounts into your firm, you're going to have some interesting investment issues as you grow. I think the same thing if you're looking at an exit. If you're not covering the right risks and managing the right strategy, that way you need to know what's going on. So I think, and Laura talked about the one with a death of a partner or a shareholder. Again, same thing, understanding what does that look like. If you're doing debt financing, maybe that's about key man insurance and making sure that you've got that side of things covered so that you can raise money more easily. You can get this stuff afterwards, but understanding what the costs look like is going to play into your game.
Yeah, that's a great point. Looking ahead, and as you've been talking all along about looking at where you could be in the future and just thinking ahead. So, Laura, do you want to pipe in as well?
Let me think here. Not much. In our case, like we're on IT and writing code. It's not much that you can protect these days in terms of writing the code itself. We're still protecting the IP and copyright, but sometimes it's really, really difficult to consider it that is, like a unique piece of code unless it's a research type and contains a bunch of algorithms that nobody else can reproduce. That being said, we also have to take into consideration the contractors that we've worked with and who owns what piece of the software. So that's something we had to think ahead of time, because when you pass your company onto a bigger company, they're interested in all this detail, like how many lines of code and who wrote what and all these details. So even if it's not a very protectable type of algorithm, you still have to know who wrote what and who owns what part of it.
Definitely. Xavier, do you want to wrap us up here?
Yeah, I think that the theme that both Laura and Jonathan is, I get to repeat the theme, so that's a nice roll, right? But I identify with one thing, which is everything is context specific. I recall one time I was opening up a sales office in Hong Kong, and the big consulting firm that was doing our accounting, came up with an estimate that would be, a $500,000 expenditure. I ended up doing the whole thing for $40,000. So because I had to take it from another perspective, and it's the same thing with the software liabilities when you have contractors. I'm not so much worried about IP. Sometimes it's more worried about who owns what, so they don't come running after you later. And when you'll end up doing a due diligence later, someone's going to tell you, well, hey, is that risk managed? And all of a sudden you don't own that software, and you got to go negotiate with that guy. So I think what Jonathan, which I think it was Jonathan that said, and also Rivers, is you need to look at each context with people that have dealt with that context before. And your network of advisor, not the advisor that hasn't dealt with it because he's an expert, so he's an insurance expert or he's a legal expert. You really have to find the people that have lived it before that'll even guide you to the right experts. Go see someone, and that's where the ecosystem is really valuable. Go find a startup entrepreneur who's had to live it the hard way.
Mm-hmm.
No more value can be had than from someone who's lived it through the school of hard knocks.
So in the case that somebody goes to their community and it's a really unique situation that they're in, and they're not really able to find somebody who has lived the exact circumstance themselves, do you have any suggestions on where a fairly new entrepreneur could go who might not be as connected within the ecosystem to have that breadth of connections of people who have experienced a multitude of different circumstances? What would your suggestion be for them for next steps?
You're asking me, Xavier, again?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry,
yes. I think that the startup ecosystems are they're everywhere now. And an entrepreneur should get to know one and know who the mentor networks, because a lot of them have mentor and coach networks. And there's very active network, whether online or physically. I'm sure somewhere not far from you. If you're an entrepreneur out there, just find out who they are and find one that matches you. Some of them are specific in the food industry, some are finance, some are general. But find a network that's near you and get to know them. Mm-hmm. The cohorts or the entrepreneurs that have lived the school of hard knocks will be there. They'll be happy to share. I've never had a no from someone I've called and said, can you share your expertise on something?
Yeah, that's great. That's why we love the startup community. Everyone's learning from one another, so that's great. So I'm going to pass it over to Scott. Having heard this discussion, what have we missed? What needs to be protected from day one, and what advice would you give for entrepreneurs on insurance and protecting their startup?
Okay, so throughout a lot of the discussion, I heard about looking for partnerships in the community or asking for advice from others, and I agree with that totally, and that's what you should expect from your insurance provider as well. So, for example, in TruShield, what we have done is provided a new, what we call them assist products or assist value-added improvements to our policy, and one of them that we're adding is actually called risk management assist, and this is designed maybe not around the risk management from a project management standpoint, but it is if you are, for example, if you are a chain of restaurants and you're looking to install certain types of fire protection system over your deep fat fryers, you can call into this number and speak to a risk management representative, and they can give you some independent advice on what type of system and what we would be looking for, so it helps you in your search. So if you just go out to a contractor and a contractor may be overselling you or underselling you, so there's a good partnership there. The other thing too is that I did overhear there is a lot of stuff on risk management with respect to when you're working on project timelines and you want to get your project up and going. Everyone knows that everything that you expect to happen within a certain timeline, most often you are overshooting your expectations, and you have to work a lot harder than you thought. to meet your deadlines. So can you imagine then if on top of that there's an unexpected loss that happens and you have to divert all your attention away to thinking about that? So that's where a good insurance partner steps in, and they really take care of your loss for you and help you get you back up and running. So your deadlines will be delayed somewhat, but you also have some financial protection in place to make sure that your project is kept to a better timeline.
Great. So we've got about 10 minutes left. I'm going to ask all of our panelists now to give your one closing piece of advice for entrepreneurs planning to mitigate risks and protecting your startups. I know, Xavier, this one will be hard for you, but your one top piece of advice would be great from each of you. And Xavier, you can go first, so you don't have to summarize this time.
I lose the benefit, do I? I would say that get up in the morning and start thinking about what is it that you are making too many assumptions about, and find out, how do I validate those assumptions, and how do I get somebody to check something for me? How do I get the expertise? It's there. It's in fingertips. It's within your network's reach. You just got to ask yourself the question. I think that the entrepreneurs that I've seen for me that are very successful are people that are great at building teams. And I think the first is mindset. I love River's wording on mindset. I think mindset is, how you get up in the morning, how you have your breakfast with yourself or your friends or whatever, how you start the day or how you close the day, however you want to like it. But you got to get yourself in the right mind frame of figuring what is it that I didn't check yet.
I love that. I love in a conversation about risk, it's all about mindset. I love it. So Rivers, you next.
So Xavier and I were playing on the same relay team today because I love the whole concept of a team, and thank you, Xavier, for referencing that, because it really ties into one of my last pieces of advice is that business really is a team sport, and in building your team, you need to surround yourself with the right people who know how to play the role on your team that needs to be played, and they enjoy playing that role on that team. And in that regard, not only will they be reactive to helping you mitigate risk, but they'll also be proactive because they want to keep playing in the game that you're playing. So that's how I would kind of extend from what my friend Xavier just referenced.
I agree.
That's perfect. So mindset and team are our two big takeaways so far. So Laura, on to you.
All right. That being said, with team and mindset, I'm not sure. In terms of risks, one risk I didn't anticipate, and I'm just going to say it here. When we started with innovation in technology, one thing that could be very detrimental and bring great risk is the fact that you might demo or show your technology to various people just to get your feedback and see where you are. And if you always get the feedback that it's a great product or a great service, that might be detrimental. In our case, we were saying, okay, instead of using the self-checkout machines at Costco or Safeway or wherever, you can use your mobile phone and you can self-checkout your groceries. And everybody was like, wow, great app, can I download it? But from this type of positive feedback to actually running the business and making the money from the retailers was a completely different situation. So I would say, like, surrounding yourself with people who are not necessarily the innovators might be a good thing, because innovators get excited about the innovation, and that might not be something that will help you run the business on the long run. So that's my piece of advice.
That's
very cool.
Yeah.
That's a great one. Yeah.
All right, and Jonathan.
So I'll try not to copy, so we'll go a little different way. So I'd say don't be afraid to ask. And so I guess the closest I'd help if we're talking insurance and risk is that no one wants to call their insurance company for their car and say, what happens if I get a speeding ticket? What's going to happen to my rate? Because they're all afraid someone's going to go rerun their insurance again and look to see what's going on and is their rate about to go up, right? So I think in the same way, you got to know if you don't ask, you won't get. People always say, right? So if that's to your insurance company saying, hey, I'm thinking maybe we should have some more insurance for this reason, the same thing might apply. You might say, I'm really afraid to call and ask because they're going to say, oh, you guys are pretty risky. We're going to turn it up. Or you call up another company and you say, hey, what do you guys do with, with this kind of risk? And you're afraid someone's going to look at you and go, well, why the hell would you be worried about employment insurance? That's not really an issue. Your staff love you, and you're afraid to ask that question. And so if you're afraid to ask, you're never going to learn about these things. You're not going to learn there's a smart way to deal with it, or maybe they're going to look at you and say, why would you bother with that risk? That's not a real risk, and sometimes that can be the best advice you'll ever get. So I think you got to be willing to share and maybe look like a fool sometimes. Ask those questions, whether it's to these ecosystems, whether it's people that are selling you things, and remember obviously that they are selling you stuff, but usually they'll be pretty clean about what the real situation is. And whether it's family or investors, all these people that have been through these things before, don't think you can't ask just because you're going to look bad. You need to get the real info, and the sooner you get it, the faster you can make the right decisions.
Perfect. So we'll recap quickly. We have mindset, having a good team, surround yourself with the right people. Also surround yourself with non-innovators. Thank you, Laura. That's a good one that we don't usually hear. Look like a fool. I like that one a lot. So we'll wrap that up with one last piece of advice from Scott.
Well, it's a piece of advice that I've always been throwing out there, and I've heard from other people as well, is that you need partners or team players, and your insurance company. Although we did hear the advice, a lot of people are afraid to communicate with your insurance company. I don't think that needs to be the case, and so use your insurance company to your advantage. Look for ones that have that have things such as legal assist or risk management assist, so you can call up and ask those questions, because it's better to be proactive about these things rather than just waiting to the end, waiting for the loss to happen and not knowing how to react. So it's much better to look for a partner and ask those questions. And your startup, you're learning your business. That's the advice that I've heard from the panel, and I would agree with it.
Awesome. So we have a couple minutes left, and we do have one last question from our audience that ties into what we've just been talking about. And so somebody has asked, what questions should you ask a potential insurance company? So I'm going to approach that from the startup side. So Jonathan, perhaps do you want to weigh in on that? You commented on a few, but...
So I think it's funny, what was just being discussed is exactly what my thought would be, and that's you need more than just an insurance product. I mean, people do it with cars, unfortunately. They just ask what the price is and then sign off at the bottom. I think that we've had a really good experience with our insurance, I guess salesman technically, to sit down and look at it. I actually have a really fun quick story for you, which is that he actually got on the phone for us when I was signing a lease for our new building, because the lease had all these insurance requirements, and he said, these are just crazy. And our real estate guy went back and tried to argue it, but of course couldn't actually argue. So we got our insurance guy on the phone with their insurance guy, and all of a sudden we went from like 9 clauses of insurance requirements on our lease to 3. And I think 4 of them, they said they couldn't even technically sell us insurance to cover it. And so that would be kind of my key thing, is get a company that thinks like you. So if it's business focused, that's great. Don't go to your auto insurer and buy business insurance from them. It probably doesn't make any sense. You're not going to get good advice thrown in. And if they have specific coverage that's going to help you, that's even better. But it's about that relationship, that person you can call and ask for help when you need it, or that group of people.
Perfect. And do any of the other panelists want to weigh in on that question?
I'll weigh in on it, and it's simple enough, is that whenever I approach any of my quote-unquote suppliers, I reference the fact I'm not looking for a supplier, I'm looking for a strategic partner. And a strategic partner lasts long-term. It doesn't. It's not a one-off purchase of insurance. Like TruShield, I've talked to the guys there. They really understand the whole element of strategic partnership, and that's the type of conversations I have. Is here's where I'm going as a business. How can we partner together so we can both be successful?
I love it. Xavier, any last thoughts?
No, everyone's really wide today, so I'm happy listening to them. I'll follow their advice.
All right, perfect. And I'll pass it over to Laura. If you want to add any questions that you wish that you would have asked perhaps an insurance company in the past, what would you have asked now that you didn't know then?
I think there were a bunch of questions I would have liked to ask. One thing I didn't know and I've learned from a different startup was the fact that some insurance company can insure you if you're, let's say, like a software shop and you're developing software for other parties and other people, and let's say they don't pay you back, the insurance company can help. I didn't know that. There are lots of contractors who end up not being fully paid for their software, and yeah, there were their insurance company who can help you out there.
Perfect.
Actually, one of the things that I just remembered is, and Laura, thank you for the memory on the past experience. If you've done a lot of exports, a lot of people don't know about Export Development Canada, and we had some phenomenal relationships with them, and so that might be something you also want to consider, is that they have all sorts of services and of all different types that allow risk, especially when you're doing export. And you reminded me of that, Laura, because of contractors and payments, and especially in international business.
Yeah, that's a really great resource as well. And my colleague Rochelle is tweeting out all of these resources to our viewers and those who aren't able to listen in at the moment. So all of these resources and all these great tips that you guys have offered will be disseminated through our social media channels. So I will have to wrap it up now, but a huge thank you to Scott, Rivers, Jonathan, Xavier, and Laura. Thank you to all of you who have tuned in today, and especially to TruShield Insurance for your expertise and for supporting the Startup School program. As I said, we will be tweeting the live recording out to you, to our audience, so you can reference it at any time. So I encourage you all to join us for the next Startup School on June 6th, when we'll be talking about the cloud for startups, how you can grow your startup by leveraging the cloud. So you can check out Startup Canada's event by startupcan.ca/events for more information. And if you do need more startup inspiration, you can join us this Wednesday at noon Eastern Standard Time for Startup Chats, when we'll be discussing succession planning, and also this Friday at noon when we'll be discussing Exporting 101. And last but not least, I encourage everyone to check out startupaward.ca and nominate yourself or one of your favorite change makers in your communities within the business community for a Startup Canada Awards. Those are open until July 20th. So it's startupaward.ca for more information and to nominate. So thank you again to everyone. I hope you have a enterprising week, and please stay tuned to our social media channels. The hashtag Startup School is where you can find all of this information online. So thanks again, guys, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.